Box of Rain,
Yeah.
Ripple, Truckin'. I mean, those four right off the bat are all better than any song on this album. So
Yeah, they just
I
stand
really
out
can't
so much
stress it.
more.
Yeah, I really can't stress enough that if you're going to listen to one of the two from the 70s, do American Beauty.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. 3 down, 3 to go, fellas. Are you ready for some James Taylor? Now, I need to give a little bit of context right here because we have long joked around and we talk about music off the books for years and years before we did this podcast. And it became almost like a funny cliche of, there was always kind of like bands that we all liked that everybody else would laugh because they weren't necessarily critical darlings along the way. And then there were groups and bands that we didn't like. But few things were as defined more in the lore of each of our 3 opinions than the fact that Matt does not like James Taylor. And he would take every chance to tell you that he did not like James Taylor. But we are free thinkers and we are open-minded. And so what I am most interested in here after Matt talks about the numbers for Sweet Baby James from James Taylor is, did Mr. Taylor win him over with his most famous album? Matt, give us the numbers and then tell us what your thoughts are.
Well, I first have to clean a stack here. James Taylor, actually, in the Rolling Stone list, is the highest ranked album that we're covering tonight in Rolling Stone, not Cat Stevens. James Taylor came in at 182 with Sweet Baby James. So, but as far as best ever albums is concerned, it's number 296 in the 1970s, 38 in 1970 itself, and 1443 overall, making it the lowest ranked album that we're covering tonight on best ever albums. So,
can I also mention something too? I believe both Cat Stevens and James Taylor dated Carly Simon at around the same time, and Carly Simon was dating a who's who, you know what I mean, in the 70s of folks, so she must have had that good, you know what I mean, along the way in the 70s, so I did want to throw that out there, so shout out to Carly Simon, who I think we are covering a little later, with that good. All right, Matt, speaking of good, what did you think of this album?
This album sucks.
So he did not win over Matt. All right, Matt, do shit. I guess then we're going to get to hear the parable that is Matt's thoughts on James Taylor right here. I'm going to turn it over. Josh and I'll just sit back and just give a brief take after it. So, Matt, the floor is yours. You've been waiting for this one.
Unlike Cat Stevens, this is wuss rock. I mean, this is like this guy...
Beta rock, if you will, as I described it earlier.
Sure, John. Yes. That's maybe
Charlie rock.
PC way of doing it. Yeah, maybe this is Charlie rock. I get why people like James Taylor. It's very there is melody here, and I think his voice is my biggest issue. I can't. It's just way too light. It's way too. I mean, the fact that he did this, I think he was 22 when this album came out, and this sounds like an album that he would have done when he was 63.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's just and it's so. And I thought just the folky, like straight up folky stuff was bad enough. I hated the bluesier stuff that he's doing on here even more. It seems so disingenuous when he's sitting there trying.
That's what I wrote down.
Blues,
yeah,
he's trying to do a blues rock song, and a couple of them are on here. He's trying to do this blues rock thing, and there's times where he's playing it, and this guitar tone, unlike Carlos Santana's, is just so wimpy. It's so like let me find like the Muzak like level of guitar tone on my amp, and let's use that so it'll play in an elevator somewhere and nobody will think twice about it. It's just so, talk about, this is the zero edge. Like there's negative edge in here as compared to Cat Stevens. Cat Stevens for folk guys having a lot more edge. And when he does songs like "Oh Susanna," that was just, I really hated
God, that was
song.
awful.
That was like that. I was like, this song sucks. And then actually, it's like towards the end there was a kind of a cool part where it picks up and did something a little interesting, and then he just stopped. And I'm like, the one time you actually did something that piqued my interest, you're like, nah, I'm done, right? So it's just, and back to the bluesy things. It's even funny, not with him just playing with that guitar tone, but there's times where he's like calling out to people, being like, yeah, like getting into it, and I am having the exact opposite reaction in that moment. So the fact that he's feeling it so much that in the recording he goes, yeah, and I'm just like, I just don't get it. This made me like him even less because I wasn't aware of these bluesier songs that he had done. So when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem to fit what a 22-year-old guy from the 1970s, even a folk artist, should be doing. This is the definition of dad rock, like baby boomer dad, like, mellow. I just don't like this at all. Thumbs down. Don't ever listen to James Taylor willingly.
That might have been the most favorable Matt has ever been about James Taylor there in terms of my okay. Josh, what do you think?
Well, I'm not as strong as Matt on his vitriol of James Taylor. I find this album completely inoffensive and background music, and it just reminds me that James Taylor is like the mold for all of these future singer-songwriters like Jack Johnson and Jason Mraz and all these people that I remember hearing on the radio. And I think there's some sort of appeal, or there must be some sort of market for that sort of trying for sincere, heartfelt, monotone lyrics, but it didn't do much for me. I knew the famous song like Fire and Rain and Sweet Baby James, but I didn't know some of the other songs. I also, like you, Matt, found Oh Susanna and his attempt at blues to be insincere, I guess is the way I thought about it, or half-hearted even. It's just like, stop trying to be something you're not. You're clearly not responding to the blues in the way that like Eric Clapton is, or some other person.
He's like your friend's dad who's trying to fit in with the cool kids. You're just like, I can
Did it
do
make
this
you-
rock and roll stuff too, guys.
Yeah.
Let's listen to me jam.
Did it make you appreciate Eric Clapton more after your somewhat scathing
God.
review of him last week, Josh? Like,
Yes.
to hear that?
Yes. He has more blues in his hands than James Taylor has in his whole body. And but there was some songs I did like on here. I liked Country Road. I like the Lo and Behold. I like when guitarists like hit their guitar like a drum to keep the beat. That's kind of a minor thing, but I like when they do that, and he did that on there. And then yeah, I guess that's it. By the time I hit Sunny Skies, which was the third track on the album, it was like, okay, this guy is just like every other male singer-songwriter who I can just skip over and not listen to again.
And way worse too.
Yeah, I guess way worse. He's so serious on the album cover as well, looking at him.
Yes, he is.
He feels very, very deeply.
He does. So I wish maybe we should start incorporating blurbs from the Rolling Stone list about why they're on the list, because I would be interested in hearing that. But John, let's kick it over to you, and you can tell us your thoughts.
So here's the thing. I don't hate James Taylor any more than I hate like a number of... I mean, I feel like the 70s was peak era for singer... Like, I made a list, and I have to read like just number of people in the 70s that were singer-songwriters. It's like Billy Joel, Paul Simon, Bruce Springsteen, John Denver, Harry Chapin, Chris Christopherson, Don McLean, Jackson Brown, Randy Newman, Cat Stevens, right? Harry Nilsson, Neil Diamond. There's just 1,000 of these dudes floating around. So it's kind of hard for me to differentiate any. And I didn't even mention like all the members of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Stephen Stills, Graham Nash. They were all releasing their own stuff. It just feels like there were 1,000 of these guys writing singer-songwriter stuff to varying degrees of resonance to me. It's not my preferred genre. I am not a one guy in a guitar type guy traditionally. There are exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, I find a lot of those albums to be boring and less profound than people who listen to them want to say it's profound. Now, I will say, you guys are seeing that with James Taylor, and I get it, but to me, James Taylor just writes very universal love songs for people that have very uncomplicated love affairs. Like, it might have been, tumultuous and stuff, but it's not complicated, if that makes sense. It rarely scratches anything besides this relationship is pleasant and I'm in love with this person, or this relationship ended and I'm sad and angry and hurt by this relationship. It doesn't get into sort of any universal themes or any edgy, angsty, thing that would draw me in, right? It's just there. And like no song exemplifies this album. Now, I will say Fire and Rain, if it wasn't played so often, I think I do like that song. I think it's actually a very well-written song. But, I mean, the song Sunny Skies, which is what I picked for the montage, to me is... You either hear that song and you like it and you're going to like James Taylor, or you hear that song and you're like, ugh, and you're not going to like James Taylor. It's almost like the perfect litmus test for James Taylor. Like, you listen to that and you know immediately, am I going to like the rest of his work? I do think it's funny what Matt said, that, yeah, this was the work of a 22-year-old guy that sounds like the work of 30-year-old James Taylor, 40-year-old James Taylor, 50-year-old James Taylor. And in that, he's sort of like Jackson Browne and Chris Christopherson and, solo Paul Simon and Billy Joel, just guys that I just think you put them on in the background, you can sort of notice they're there. They don't anger me like they do Matt, but they're just very much there, and I just never got whatever the gene is to really love that type of music. So
I think part of it too is like I like a lot of those other artists that you're talking about, and I get why that would be something that I like. I don't mind. I'm fine with Billy Joel. I'm fine with I actually like
Neil Diamond.
No, not Neil. I don't really know Neil Diamond, to be honest.
America.
I did like that when I was a kid. That was definitely an album that I listened to as a kid. But I'm thinking of Jackson Browne. I think Jackson Browne's got some great stuff. But there's something about Jackson Browne's. Yeah, I do.
Is he really that much better than? It's like it's all.
I think his songwriting's much better. "Late for the Skies" is a great song.
Yeah.
Now,
bubblegum, different flavor. Or same bubblegum, same flavor, different, rapper is how I look at a lot of that stuff.
I see why you say that, but so this is where I'm differentiating, because to me, Jackson Browne, there's the tone isn't all, there's hardly any edge to him at all either, but
Okay, so CTS audience, we just lost Matt briefly in the middle of, I think, about a 7-minute tangent on James Taylor right here. So I'm gonna allow him to redux that James Taylor rant right here for the masses. So when last we heard from Matt, he was talking about why Jackson Browne was better than James Taylor, much to my disagreement.
Well, the thing for me with Jackson Browne, because I do understand why you would lump him in with, the tonality, the sound of Jackson Browne is similar to, James Taylor. It's that wimpy, folk rock kind of thing going on. But I think that Jackson Browne is a better songwriter. I think that the music and the songs that he's done on an album like Late for the Sky is really great stuff. And I like this genre in general. That's the thing. I don't mind singer-songwriters. I don't mind people on the wimpier side of things. And I just never felt that James Taylor ever had, the songs to really back it up. And then when this album, when he's going to throw in the blues in there, which it doesn't sound like it belongs at all for something like him, that just took me over the edge. The only thing that James Taylor ever did that I was like, okay, I think I kind of like that song was Carolina on My Mind. For some reason, I just think that's a prettier.
Oh, come on! Fire and Rain's a good song. You have to. I know it's overplayed.
Maybe, to me, that could be something. I've just heard it too much.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
It might be an overplayed thing. And I get why people look. This is all personal, obviously. I know that James Taylor, a lot of people love James Taylor. I know a lot of people who love James Taylor. He's just never done anything for me. I don't get it. I don't think that I think that there's better versions of James Taylor out there that you could go to. And so that's kind of the thing. And yeah, I do like this stuff generally. But he just doesn't do anything for me. So I think that that's kind of what takes me over the edge with him.
What's funny too, Matt, is I know you also, another Mount Rushmore group you hate is the Eagles. And this sounded a little bit like the Eagles at points, I thought. Mm-hmm. Did you catch any of that? I just felt like at times it had that California cool, Beatles.
I see what you're saying.
Eaglesy, excuse me, not Beatles. Eaglesy sound.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I didn't really pick up on that on this one listen. I actually think that when we get into the Eagles, I could see myself liking that more than I've historically said. I'm a little bit more open to that because I think that the Eagles, I think that I fall more into their lane more than I would with James Taylor. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. I did go into this with an open mind. I really did try, just to do that, but I didn't end up liking this. And I do have the Rolling Stone description up here, Josh. Do you want to hear that?
Sure. Yeah.
It said that Taylor's second album landed him on the cover of Time magazine, and its gentle melodies drew the blueprint for many of the 70s singer-songwriters that followed. But he went through a private hell on his way to success. The hit Fire and Rain was inspired by his stay in a psychiatric institution in the mid-1960s, which he committed himself, and the suicide of a close friend. In the months before making this album, Taylor committed himself again, this time to kick heroin. His confessional lyrics set a new standard, as did the spare melodicism of his songs, but it was the quiet strength in his voice that makes this album a model of folk pop healing.
See, why is he not writing about trying to kick heroin addiction and stuff? Like, where is all of
done
that?
Some Velvet Underground stuff. That would have been.
Where is all of that personal stuff in this album? I don't hear it, and this just seems very calculated to be as appealing as possible versus trying to be more personal.
I also love to look at sort of the reviews, and I don't usually cheat. And on this, I just happen to check right now, and pretty much this is universally beloved. 5 stars, Rolling Stone Album Guide. 5 stars, Encyclopedia of Popular Music. 5 stars, All Music. There is one notable exception, though. Robert Christgau of The Village Voice. Here's his line that's quoted in the Wikipedia page. Taylor's vehement following bewilders me, as near as I can discern. He is just another poeticizing simp. Even the production is conventional for true believers only. So I guess he's on Team Matt here in terms of his view on it as well.
Yeah, the production didn't do it any favors. It
does sound old, old, and not like vintage good old. It sounds like old, better production came later. I will say that. I will say this though too. Like, there are good songs on here. I can't believe I'm going to defend James Taylor. I don't hate James Taylor. I didn't think I would be the guy defending him though. But Fire and Rain's a great song. I think Country Road's a very good song, and Sweet